What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to my channel. So today we are talking about emergency funds, all about it, what it is, exactly how much you need, and the reasons why you even need it in the first place. Exactly a year ago, I didn't even know the importance of emergency fund. That wasn't until my family and I encountered a huge financial situation where we only had to rely on one source of income. That was when I sought to understand the importance of emergency fund and exactly how much I needed to have saved up. Today, I've understood that nearly 1 in 10 Brits do not have any savings account at all. That includes emergency savings account. But what exactly is an emergency fund in the first place? An emergency fund is money that you've set aside for any financial surprises that you may encounter. It also covers you in the case of an unexpected financial blow that may hit you. It could be as extreme as you losing your job or as small as your boiler breaking down or your car breaking down. One thing I know about emergency funds is that you need to keep it liquid, which is easily accessible. Keep it in a savings account that could earn a bit of interest, or even a current account if you're in any place that you won't have access to any savings account. It could also be an online banking account that you would use to save that money. It just needs to be handy for any situation because, as the name depicts, it's an emergency fund. Now, what an emergency fund isn't is money that you can travel with. It is not money set aside for you to luxury about or lavishly live with. No, it is money for emergency situations. As a result, I personally did not buy into the idea of keeping an emergency fund in an investment account or investing it in the stock market. Just because if you want to invest in the stock market, it is something that you want to keep in the long term to receive its benefit thereof. But an emergency fund is something that you would easily access should any financial situation hit. Exactly how much emergency fund do you need? Now, that is very much dependent on you and your financial situation. Take into account a family where there's only one source of income compared to a family with two sources of income. Now, the family with one source of income would need to save up a lot more just because there's only one breadwinner and one person who takes into account the family's expenses. Now, if that person is to lose their job or fall ill, it means that the whole family would have no money to rely on. And as a result, it may even take more years or even months for them to recover from whether they're being sick or even whether they've been sacked from their job to even find a new job. Now, as a result, the family with just one source of income will need to have at least, I would say, a year's worth of emergency funds saved up compared to the family with two sources of income where one could be a buffer should the unexpected happen. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to jump up and save up 1 year's worth of funds in your account. No, you have to start small. It always takes one step at a time to reach the goal. You start from £10 a month to £100, as much as you can, and save it up. Now, how much exactly you need is totally dependent on exactly how much you spend in a month as a household. The best way to start building up your emergency fund is by budgeting. Now, budgeting gives you leadway and helps you to understand exactly how much you're spending in the household, where the money is going and when, and how much, which is the most important thing, that you're spending, because that would help you and give you understanding as to how much you need to save up for that emergency when it hits. So you need to take into account the housing cost, our accommodation bill, the food and sustenance, transportation, and possibly clothing as well, because these are all emergency things that you would need should the unexpected happen. It does not take into account you going out every week to eat out with your friends or having to buy breakfast every day in, day out. As the name says, it's an emergency fund for emergency situations only, and so you do not take into account luxury or living extravagantly at all. It's not part of it at all. Now, after you've calculated that, you want to add that amount and save up every single month to ensure that you've hit each goal and each milestone gradually. Now, you may ask yourself, what's the reason why I need to have an emergency fund? Everyone's talking about it. I don't see the importance of it. I have a savings account already that I'm saving up. But what you don't understand is that your savings account is separate from an emergency savings account. Just because your savings account could be money you're saving up to buy a house. Now, if the unexpected happens and you dip into that amount, it sets you back, and now you won't be able to reach your goal that you had initially to buy the house. Also, in situations where you're currently paying a debt, you don't want to have to go borrow money to then pay again, to then get further into debt. So the emergency fund will create a sort of cushion to soften the blow that hits you whenever you encounter any financial one. Now, if you're self-employed or a contractual worker, you most importantly need an emergency fund saved up. It is not even a joke. You need a lot of emergency funds saved up. Just because you're contractual, meaning that your job and your income is not steady, it could stop at any point. You could not get a contract at any point. You could lose that contract at any point. And as a result, always keep money on the side. Save as much as you can on the side for emergency situations to cover your bills for 6 months up to a year if you can. With being self-employed, there are so many benefits that the workplace person could have that you probably wouldn't. We could have insurance in the workplace for any accidents and emergencies. We could have things set aside for health benefits as well, that you want to make sure that you've got a bit of cash saved aside for emergency situations. Now, another area where emergency situations are important is in the area where you're saving for a specific goal or to hit a specific amount for an actual thing. An example is what I mentioned earlier. If you're saving up for a house, you want to be able to have money aside for emergency situations, because if not, if the unexpected happens or if someone gets sick or there's an emergency, you would have to dip into the money that you're saving for that goal to be able to pay for that emergency, which means that you've set yourself back and you've gone backwards in your financial goal, which is why you want to have a cushion to be able to rely on should that happen. Another situation where you need an emergency fund saved up is when you're trying to pay down your debt. You don't want to rack up more debt. You don't want to have to add more debt to your already built debt. You want to be able to make sure that any situation that happens, you've got it covered. Which is why sometimes it raises the argument where someone is asking whether if they're in debt, they should even save for emergency at all. I say it's 50-50. Now, it could be in the case where you want to save just so that if the unexpected happens, you don't have to dip or go borrow or go find money and go further into debt to be able to cater for it. On the other hand, someone might say that I want to pay down the debt as quickly as I can so that I can use the minimum payments to save up as my emergency fund. Either way, it's up to you, the job you do, and how confident you are in your situation that you're in. Now, if you think that in the next 5 to 6 months or year, you won't encounter any financial emergency, kudos to you. I'm happy for you. You can go ahead and pay down the debt. But if you're someone who is unsure, your work is not stable, the department you work in, you're not so much a permanent member of the workplace, you want to be able to make sure that you've got some money set aside, because you do not want to dwindle down in debt. That would further lower your credit score. It would bring a whole lot of problems that you probably do not want to encounter. So make sure you save up that emergency fund. Another situation where you would need an emergency fund saved up is if you have a serious medical condition. There are cases where insurance, or even when you're in the UK, the healthcare may cover. But there are particular situations where if your health is really dwindling down the drain, you may need a carer, you may need a nurse, at-home nurse, someone to take care of you. And that all costs money. You may even have to put that person or that family member in the care home, and that is a lot of money that you would need to pay for. The government may cover a bit, your deductibles may cover a bit, but ultimately you may have to suffer a huge blow, which is why if you want to have a serious emergency fund saved up, just to ensure that should that happen or should that situation happen, you'll be able to cater for your family and give them the best possible care that they will probably need. Now that we know the importance of it, we want to ask ourselves, how well can we build up that emergency fund? Now, as I said earlier, it takes one step. It is you having to give up those unnecessary spendings that you spend to put that money aside for that goal of putting aside an emergency fund. The second thing could be that you may want to pick up a part-time job just to rack up some savings and keep it in your emergency fund while still doing your normal job. Ultimately, you can negotiate your salary in the workplace and see if you can get a bit of a pay rise just to saving a sum that you could use as your emergency fund. Also, you could leverage your skills and your abilities, whatever consultancy, if you're a good admin person, just leverage it. There's so many opportunities out there for you to be able to use your skills and offer your knowledge in a certain area to earn a bit of money. Whatever you need to do, just make sure that you're saving up a little bit aside for the situations where you may need it, because your salary may not always be enough for you. You may fall sick in the month, you won't be able to go to work. Your sick pay may cover only just so much, and it might not be enough to cover your household bills. And you don't want a situation whereby you're going for a loan just to pay for your rent or for your mortgage. That is very embarrassing. And if you don't get it, you lose your home and you have nowhere else to stay. Make sure that at the least you're saving for at least a month at the moment. So if you're someone like me a year ago who had nothing, just start from today. This is your wake-up call, a light bulb moment. Make sure you start from today, saving as little as you can towards that emergency goal. However big your financial goal is, or however big you want to reach, however much you want to retire early. There are so many circumstances that would come your way that you won't have money to cater for, and that is the importance of emergency funds. Now, ultimately, I would say every single person, you need an emergency fund. We all need something to create a buffer. We all need something that would cushion the blow that hits us. We all need something that would help us in emergency situations. They're all inevitable, and it may happen to you, but you don't want it to happen before you realize you have nothing saved up. So start from today and save something small and gather it up, and it will be there for you. Now, if you're new here, please make sure you subscribe to my channel and join my family. See you next week. Bye, guys.